I have put off filming this video for a very long time. I should have filmed this a month ago, but coming up with my actual top 10 of 2017 was quite difficult. Not only did I read a lot of quantity in 2017, but I read a lot of quality in 2017. Also, this year I decided to differ from what I've done in past years, and I actually have like a list that goes from 10 to 1. So you will actually know like my favorite book of 2017. All right, I'm really excited to show you guys these books. So without further ado, here are my 10 favorite books of 2017. I won't say that they're the best books because, quite frankly, best is a different describing word than favorite. These are just my personal favorites of the year. Before I start the list, just so you know, I'm not including any rereads on this list. So anything I read for like a first or second or third time this year, I'm not including on this list. I reread Harry Potter in 2017, and clearly like 1 through 7 of my favorite books of the year would just be Harry Potter if I included rereads, so not doing that. Coming in at number 10 is Carry On by Rainbow Rowell. I adored this book. The only reason that this didn't end up higher on the list of favorites this year is because I found the first like 100 to 150 pages a little bit slower than the rest of the book. You don't meet Baz until like 100 and some odd pages into the book, and that's fine, but also Baz is kind of where the plot is, so I found the first like 100 to 150 pages just really slow, and I liked the story that started once we met Baz. So this book did, I think, still get 5 out of 5 stars for me because like it was exactly what you'd expect it to be based on the genre that it is, and like it was so meta. It was really good. I loved all the characters in this book. Didn't love Agatha that much, but I loved all the main characters in this book, and I loved Baz. Baz just like holds a really special place in my heart. So anyways, this was a really, really fun read and came in at number 10 for me. Coming in at number 9 is actually the last book that I read in 2017, and that is Beasts of Extraordinary Circumstance by Ruth M. Lang. The narrative style was on point for my personal preferences. I loved the way that they told the story and how the plot functioned, I guess, in this book. It's about this boy named Waylon Gray who has these like weird abilities, but you don't really know what they are. And the whole book is literally just about him and how he affects the world, but it's told from the perspective of multiple characters who he meets along the lines of his life and how he affected them. And I really liked it. It was like a character-driven, kind of magically done fantasy book. Also, this is a very accessible fantasy. It's shelved in the fantasy section, but if you're not normally a fantasy reader, if you're more of a literary fiction or just like fiction reader, I think this is a very accessible fantasy book to start with for sure. The number 8 spot goes to Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro. This is also one of the last books I read this year. I read this in December. This book is so well written. Quite frankly, I can't put into words why I liked the book so much. I look back and I'm like, the plot was slow. There wasn't actually much plot. It was just a very character-driven literary fiction, but like the end like packs a punch. This book is so good at like describing in a way that you can really understand how relationships work. All kinds of relationships, like platonic relationships, not platonic relationships, relationships between you and your past self. Anyways, it's definitely for people who like character-driven, well-written literary fiction. 2017 was definitely the year that I realized that I love literary fiction, so I think 2018 is going to be the year that I read a lot of literary fiction. If you have literary fiction recommendations, make sure to leave those linked down below. Do you want to be in the video with me? Do you want to say hi? I want attention. Do you want to introduce the next book with me? Coming in at number 7 is a most anticipated book from 2017, so I'm not surprised it ended up on this list, and that is Turtles All the Way Down by John Green. I loved this book. I read it in one day, almost one sitting actually, and I found that it was not only well written. I love John Green. I know that there are people who don't like John Green's writing, but this was very classic John Green in the way that it was written, but not classic John Green in the way that I found that, like, looking back, I wasn't thinking about the plot at all. I was only thinking about the characters. It deals with a really dense topic in a really well done way because John Green actually understands firsthand how anxiety and OCD work. So I found that I was reading this and I was like, oh my god, I feel that way when I get anxious, and I feel that way about certain things, and I can completely resonate with this character in a way that I haven't seen myself connect with a character in a long time. I'm gonna put you down now, okay? Be good. Make good choices. Coming in at number 6 is another YA novel, and that is The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. I actually listened to this on audiobook, and the person who reads this audiobook is phenomenal. I could not recommend listening to this audiobook highly enough. It was so well done. The way that it was paced was really well done for me, and the topic matter was dealt with perfectly. I found that I didn't connect with certain elements of the book as much as I wanted to, but there were other parts that I loved. I loved that this book had parents that actually existed. Thank you, YA world. The parents were not only like in her life, but they were actually in the book. They like played an essential, vital role to the main character's life and to the plot, and I found that I loved that element. And I also just really, really loved how they dealt with the Black Lives Matter movement and how the author had Star deal with her own personal anxieties and fears and worries, and also like how she had the main character realize how courageous and brave and outgoing she was. And I really, really like the main character of this book and the growth that the main character goes through. Okay, we are hitting my top 5 books of the year. I'm really excited to talk to you guys about these. Coming in at number 5 is the first audiobook that I read this year, and that is The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. I loved this. I don't know if it's just because Jim Dale reads the audiobook, and I tend to like literally any audiobook that Jim Dale reads, but I really liked the plot as well. I read some of this myself and listened to the majority of it on audio. I just really liked the world. The author does a really good job of making you feel like you are there and making you understand how the characters feel. There are so many characters in this. I will say that I saw all the twists coming, so that part wasn't overly well done for me. I think I gave this 4 to 5 stars when I first read it, but when I was looking back on the books that like really sat with me this year, like the books where I was like, I'm always thinking about that book and I always want to recommend that book and I always want to talk about that book, this was one of the main ones. And I think that when I gave it 4 to 5 stars at the beginning, it was simply because I saw the twist coming, and I have a hard time giving 5 out of 5 stars to books that don't surprise me in any way. I would highly recommend this if you like something that is like magical lit with a very atmospheric writing style. My 4th favorite book of the year goes to the first 5 out of 5 star read that I read this year, and that is All Are Wrong Todays by Elon Mastai. I loved this book. I found that it was quirky and weird. It was just like a really, really, really well done literary sci-fi, and I don't love sci-fi that much, so I was shocked by this. It's also a Canadian read, which I really liked. Like, it's a Canadian author. For the majority of it, it takes place in Toronto, which is a Canadian city. It follows a world where our current 2016, 2017, our current present is actually the wrong present. It follows a main character from what should have been 2016 who accidentally goes back in time and switches the past, and now we're stuck in this present. So it's basically about like what would happen if your present day wasn't actually present day. It's like a really, really cool twist on time travel, and the author does a really good job of like explaining the science of the situation without it being like too science-y, if that makes sense. The only negative that I will say about this book is that the only main female character could have been better done. The author could have made her like more important. They could have made her just less dull. But other than that, it was really, really good. I feel like I will forever have a problem with male authors making female characters either dumb or dull, so work on that, male authors. All right, we are hitting my top 3 books of 2017. I'm so excited to talk to you about all 3 of these. They were all phenomenal. The first of which is my 3rd pick, and that is Vicious by V.E. Schwab. I feel like the majority of you have probably heard about this book many times. It's not new, it's been talked about a lot. This is just the first year that I've read it, and I freaking loved it. I love Victoria Schwab's writing so much. She's easily one of my favorite authors. I will buy anything and everything she writes from now on. This book is like the best superhero book I've read in a very long time, because it's not a superhero book, it's like an anti-hero book, but it's an anti-hero book where everyone thinks they're a superhero, but they're not a superhero. It's so good. Also, it's like science-y. So yes, highly recommend. You should read this if you haven't read this. A+. All right, my 2nd favorite book of the year goes to The Ocean at the End of the Lane by Neil Gaiman. This book was superb. Neil Gaiman has been and will always be one of my favorite authors of all time. I pick up anything and everything he writes. I love everything he writes. He is an amazing human. I've met him before. His writing is so dreamlike and pristine. I don't know how he exists as a human. I actually don't know how he's real. This book was so well done. The world building was phenomenal. The character was on point. It's also really, really short. Highly recommend. It's just 5 out of 5 stars perfect. Okay, coming in at number 1, my favorite book of the year is actually a series of books because I read all 3 of them this year and I am counting them together, and that is A Conjuring of Light by Victoria/V.E. Schwab. It's so good! I read all 3 of these back to back early in 2017 and nothing throughout the year could top them. I mean, I've read things that were possibly better written in terms of the prose, but nothing was as well written in terms of character development and plot and execution. Easily one of my favorite series of all time. Some of my favorite characters of all time. By this book, the characters that you aren't as in love with from the beginning start to be characters you love, and then by the middle of this 3rd book, you're just I love everyone. Nobody can die. That was how I spent this whole book, was just nope, I love them all of them. Nothing can happen to anyone. There is really kick-butt female characters in this series. There is LGBTQ plus content that's really, really well done. There's relationships in every form, friendships, family relationships, brothers. It's so good. If you haven't read this series, you should. The first book is A Darker Shade of Magic. Also, this is one of the only series that I've ever read where the second book is better than the first, and the third book is better than the first 2. It gets better and better and better and better the more you read, and she's writing more from this world in the future. You should read it. It's so good. This is my aim for everyone in 2018. Read Victoria Schwab. Just read Victoria Schwab. Also follow her on Twitter because she's gold. Okay, so those were my favorite books of 2017. Make sure to comment down below and let me know what your favorites of 2017 were, and I will see you guys soon with another video. Happy reading. Bye!